Good afternoon. This is John Lucas again. I've been asked to do a demo on shear scraping. And the difference between shear scraping is really just the angle that you put the tool at. It's also a misnomer. What we're going to be doing is actually cutting with the tool. We're not going to be scraping. You sharpen the tool just like you would any other scraper, in that you raise a burr on the front, but then we tilt it at an angle and you find that sweet spot that lets it cut, and it'll actually be cutting and removing shavings rather than scraping. So let me get on with that now. As you probably know already, scraping is when the tool is held on the tool rest, the handle is slightly higher than the cutting edge. You're simply pulling the tool across the wood. Shear scraping we generally refer to as holding the tool about 45 degrees so that as the wood comes across the tool, it's cutting at more of a shear angle. There's a little burr on the tool from the grinder that peels away the fibers. You should be getting very fine little fibers like that when you're shear scraping, and it should leave a much cleaner finish. Gets rid of all the tool marks. I've got a few there because I haven't done it enough yet. Now what I've got, you can't see from the camera angle. The handle is much higher. This is level. This is where the handle is up. You kind of play with the edge and you rotate it, and you might have to move the tool front or back depending on how big the burr is that you've raised on this tool. If you're going to shear cut right up to a corner, you have to be careful. I don't want to hit that corner. So we'll just pull it across. I'll be very gentle right there. It's a little bit like the skew in that you should stay on the lower half. But I find that if you're very careful and you're cutting with the handle very high, you can do real gentle cuts with the upper part. So that allows me to reach right into this shoulder and gently pull it across. Now do a curved edge, you may have to start from the bottom and actually go up. Depends on how tight everything is. If you can get the tool in there, you're okay. But it's kind of difficult to reach around this direction. You have to get the tool rest just right. It's very difficult. I find normally I have the tool rest in that position. Again, if I cut with the upper edge and I do it very gently, and then as I move around, I rotate the tool very slightly so that the curve is cutting at the bottom. Now when cutting concave surfaces, I go to the round nose tool. Normally with a scraper, of course, you would cut from high point to low point. With shear scraping is the same way. I tilt the tool about 45 degrees and I very gently pull it across. Then I go in the other direction. Now when I first learned to do shear scraping, it was with a bowl gouge. And with the bowl gouge, what you do is you turn the flute toward the wood. You're cutting on this lower lip, and since the lower lip is supported, you're not going to get a catch. What you want to do is keep the upper lip just a little bit away from it. Again, if I do it horizontally, I'm just scraping. But if we lower the tool handle a whole bunch, and in some cases what you may need to do is lower the tool rest a lot. Now the tool's cutting at about 45 degrees. You can see I'm getting little shavings just like you do in shear scraping. If you want to do a rounded edge, you do the same thing. You stick the nose in there very gently, again keeping that lower arm around. The nice thing about shear scraping is that I can go forward and back. So by just being very gently, and I have the tool supported from my hip, so if I don't move my hip, I get a very controlled cut. When I go over here to do this concave surface, as the tool goes down, I'm moving my hip to the right, and I can really control it. I can cut downhill, I can cut uphill very gently, and it leaves a very clean cut. You see all those shavings? So that's what we call shear scraping. It leaves a surface that's very easy to go back and sand out. You've gotten rid of all the tool marks. If there's any bumps in the bottom, there's a very slight bump right there. So what I would do is simply go back and very gently travel across that area where I felt a bump. Now I got one little bitty one right there, and that's it. You can't even really see those, but you can feel those with your finger. So that's what we call shear scraping. I'm going to show you another shear scraper that I like a lot. This is a John Jordan shear scraper. It's got a two-sided cutter, so you can go in either direction depending on which way you mount the cutter in the handle. Slides in like that, and then it's used at 45 degrees. It's sharpen it, you polish off the burr that's on the top, and then you take, John sells a little ceramic hone, and you simply run it up there a couple of times until you've got a nice burr on the back side. Then you turn the lathe on, and again you also try to use it, you know, halfway down or lower. You can see the nice little shavings you get off this tool. It leaves a very clean surface, and because it's a fairly large cutter, it makes it easy to get a nice rounded surface. Okay, I want to discuss a minute about using the Hunter tool for shear scraping. We all know Hunter tool works great as a scraping tool when you're cutting in this direction, and it's cutting with about the 6 o'clock area. And so what we're going to do is we're going to move the tool so that it cuts between about 7:30, 8 o'clock, maybe 9 o'clock. So what we'll do is we'll simply rotate it around this way and use it as a scraper. And you'll notice that it's cutting now with the tip of the tool. And you'll notice I get a little cleaner cut that way. You can see the shavings coming off. See, these are shavings, these aren't scrapings. If I go down to the bottom of the cutter, it's a little bit more of a scraping cut, and you can see that it is giving me some shavings, but they're a lot smaller. I'm going to show you one last scraper. For doing the inside of bowls, I used to use this when I first started out. This is about a 1/2 inch wide, maybe 3/8 of an inch thick, and I always had problems with chattering. I had to use a curved tool rest, and even then I had problems with it chattering. Then I saved up and bought this Henry Taylor, and you'll notice it's considerably thicker and much wider, and it's amazing the difference in control. So gently put it in there, and you get just an extremely precise scrape with this thing. So if I want to use it as a shear scraping tool, it's the same thing as before. I tilt it about 45 degrees and pull it up until I get a nice clean cut.